So if you look back at 2007, Nokia had 1 billion customers. They had this utterly flawless manufacturing machine, right?
Yeah, completely dominating the globe.
Right. But then literally 5 years later, they were essentially irrelevant. And it makes you wonder, like, why does a company with perfect efficiency just collapse overnight while some messy, chaotic startup suddenly takes over the world?
Well, it comes down to something a lot deeper than just having a flashy new product. It's really about the hidden anatomy of the business. And honestly, even more importantly, the reflexes that anatomy has when the ground inevitably shifts underneath it.
Which is exactly what we're getting into today. Welcome to this deep dive. If you're listening to this right now, you're probably looking for a way to get, thorough, actionable knowledge without just drowning in an absolute sea of information overload.
There is so much noise out there.
Right. So we are going to decode how companies not only survive, but fundamentally reinvent themselves to dominate.
And to figure that out, we're pulling from a really compelling stack of ideas today. We're looking at academic frameworks like Michael Porter's foundational work on the value chain.
Classic.
Yeah. And we're also bringing in research from Cambridge University Press on dynamic capabilities, some great insights from IBM, and real-world case studies on giants like FedEx, Tesla, and even a little bit of 19th century naval warfare.
Naval warfare. I love that we're going there. So the mission for this deep dive is to really give you a mental shortcut to understanding that hidden anatomy of a successful business and to help you spot the reflexes you need for an unpredictable future. So let's just unpack this. Where do we start with the physical anatomy?
So we have to start with a concept introduced by Harvard Business School professor Michael Porter back in 1985. He called it the value chain. Now, a really common mistake.
Wait, let me guess. People confuse it with the supply chain.
Exactly. People do it all the time, but they're entirely different things.
Because supply chain is like the buzzword we hear in the news constantly now.
Right, but the supply chain is essentially just the external network of suppliers. Like, it's literally just how you get the raw materials to the loading dock.
Right.
The value chain, on the other hand, is the specific set of internal activities that a company actually performs once they have those materials. It's how they, design, produce, market, deliver, and support a product.
So it's the sequence of steps that actually creates the distinct value.
Exactly. It's internal.
I always kind of like to think about it this way. Like, if the supply chain is the delivery truck dropping off crates of groceries at the back door of the restaurant, the value chain is everything happening inside.
Oh, that's a great way to look at it.
Right. It's the prep work, the chopping, the cooking, the elegant plating, and even, like, the waiter's smile that makes you perfectly willing to pay $50 for a steak that you could have bought raw for 10.
Yes. That restaurant breakdown highlights exactly what Porter was getting at. The raw meat is the supply chain, the $50 experience. That's the value chain.
Makes sense.
And Porter argued that every business's anatomy is split into two main categories to create that experience. You have your primary activities, and then you have your support activities.
Okay, well, let's weave those into a real-world example because, just listing them off as textbook terms gets pretty dry. Let's use Tesla. How did these activities actually work together for them?
Perfect example. So let's look at Tesla's inbound logistics, which is receiving raw materials, and their operations, which is the actual manufacturing part.
Okay.
In a traditional car company, those primary activities are just heavily outsourced. They buy parts from 1,000 different vendors and just assemble them.
Right. They're basically just putting puzzle pieces together.
Exactly. But Tesla looked at that and went the complete opposite direction. They went for intense vertical integration. At their Fremont plant, they decided to build the cars, the battery packs, and even write the software themselves.
Which completely changes the value of the final car.
Right. And they had to fuel that operation with what Porter calls support activities. So things like technology development.
Which for Tesla is huge.
Huge. Their tech development wasn't just buying off-the-shelf parts. It was developing entirely proprietary powertrain systems. They even acquired Solar City to integrate, solar energy generation.
Wow, so that alters the value chain before a car even rolls off the line.
It totally does. And then you look at another primary activity, marketing and sales. I mean, most car companies spend billions on traditional dealerships and TV ads.
Oh yeah, those commercials are everywhere.
Right, but Tesla, they threw that entire model out the window. They do direct delivery to the consumer, and their marketing budget is basically zero.
$0 marketing.
Exactly. They rely on Elon Musk's social media presence instead of paid ads. And we also can't forget the service part of the primary chain, like post-sale support.
Because selling the car isn't the end of the chain.
No, not at all. Tesla didn't just sell you a car, they built out the supercharger network, offering highly convenient fast charging globally. They solved the customer's biggest fear, running out of battery after the transaction was already finished.
Which obviously adds massive value to the overall product. But, okay, let me push back a little here.
Go for it.
When you lay it all out like that, optimizing operations, cutting marketing budgets, changing material sourcing, isn't this just a fancy academic way of saying, hey, cut costs everywhere?
You know, it's a really common misconception, but no. It is absolutely not just about being cheap. It's about maximizing the margin.
The margin.
Right. Margin is the difference between the perceived value you create for the customer and the total cost of creating it. Porter argued that analyzing your value chain gives you two distinct paths to widen that margin and achieve competitive advantage.
So, basically two totally different blueprints for winning.
Yes. The first path is cost leadership. Think of Walmart or McDonald's.
Yeah, the kings of cheap.
Exactly. They optimize every single activity in their value chain for maximum ruthless efficiency so they can offer the absolute lowest possible price to the consumer. But they still make a massive profit because their internal costs are even lower.
Got it. And the second path?
That's differentiation. This is Apple, Starbucks, or, in our example, Tesla. They aren't trying to be the cheapest.
Far from it.
Right. They use their value chain, like the proprietary tech and superchargers, to create something so unique or high quality that they can charge a premium price.
But here's the catch with everything we just talked about. Mastering this physical anatomy is exactly where modern companies get completely blindsided.
Oh, absolutely.
Because building the perfect factory or having the perfect retail strategy just isn't enough anymore. The physical marketplace has expanded into the digital market space.
And the rules of the physical world absolutely do not apply there. Back in 1995, these researchers, named 𝗘𝗳𝗃 and 𝗧𝗿𝗽𝗃, introduced the concept of the virtual value chain.
Okay.
And they pointed out that if you try to manage a digital market space using the physical laws of economics, you will fail.
Wait, what do you mean the laws of physics don't apply?
Like how so?
Well, think about inventory. In the physical world, if I sell you a car, my inventory is depleted. I literally no longer have that car.
But in the virtual world, digital assets aren't depleted when they're consumed. If I sell you a software download, I still have the original software. I can sell it 1,000,000 times.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Plus, production capacity in the digital realm is governed by Moore's law. It essentially doubles every 18 months while costs just plummet. Because of this, the focus of the business has to shift entirely from the supply side, which is just making the thing, to the demand side.
Which means sensing exactly what the client wants using data.
Exactly.
So the virtual value chain is almost like a digital shadow of the physical product.
Right.
But how does a company actually extract cash from a shadow?
The secret is that the information about the physical product becomes just as valuable, and sometimes more valuable, than the product itself.
Really? More valuable?
Let's look at FedEx. Their primary physical activity, their outbound logistics, is moving a cardboard box from point A to point B. But they realized early on that just moving the box wasn't enough. They started capturing data at every single step of the journey.
Oh, right. Creating that tracking number that we all just obsessively refresh on our phones.
Yes. FedEx realized that the digital information about the package's location reduced customer anxiety and built immense trust.
It's so true. I panic if I can't track a package.
We all do. So they took a physical activity and created a totally new digital service wrapped around it. That data shadow strengthened the customer relationship so much that it allowed FedEx to just dominate the logistics market.
And on the flip side, if you ignore that shadow, it literally destroys you. Take Geffen Records from that same era.
Oh, perfect example.
They were absolute masters of the physical value chain. They knew exactly how to manufacture compact discs, distribute them to stores, and market physical objects.
They were a machine.
Right. But when the internet hit, they suddenly had to manage that physical chain while simultaneously trying to build a virtual value chain for digital music downloads. And they just struggled to adapt. If you can't figure out the virtual chain, your physical chain goes bankrupt.
Which brings us to a very dangerous trap. And it's actually the reason we brought up Nokia at the very start of this deep dive.
Because perfect efficiency sounds great until the environment changes.
Exactly. What happens when a company perfectly optimizes both its physical and virtual value chains for its current market?
And then the entire world just flips upside down.
Right. This phenomenon is known as core rigidities. If a company focuses purely on what we call ordinary capabilities, meaning they spend 100% of their energy on measurable efficiency, variance reduction, and just optimizing their daily processes, they lose the ability to adapt.
Their greatest strength literally becomes a fatal rigidity.
It does.
History is loaded with this stuff. Henry Ford is like the classic industrial example. He vertically integrated and optimized the production of the Model T so perfectly that cars were rolling off the line at an unbelievable speed.
It is a marvel.
But the market shifted. Consumers started wanting different colors, different features, maybe a little more luxury. When Ford finally realized he had to build the Model A, he couldn't just flip a switch.
No, the factory was too specialized.
Exactly. The entire factory was so rigidly optimized for one specific car that the entire system ground to a halt. They practically had to tear the factory down and rebuild it. And that single massive delay allowed General Motors to swoop in, offer variety, and seize market leadership for decades.
And we saw the exact same thing play out in the digital era. Nokia and even RIM, the makers of the BlackBerry, they absolutely dominated mobile phones.
Everyone had a BlackBerry.
Everyone. They had perfected their supply chains, their hardware production was so efficient, but they were destroyed by the iPhone.
And it wasn't just because the iPhone had a touchscreen?
No, not at all. It was because Nokia and RIM lacked Apple's software capabilities and their app ecosystem. When the entire mobile market suddenly shifted from being hardware-centric to software-centric, Nokia's massive, hyper-efficient factories became a core rigidity.
They were perfectly optimized for a world that literally no longer existed. So how do you prevent that? If optimizing your processes can eventually kill you, how do you keep from becoming this perfectly tuned dinosaur?
Well, this is where we bring in the framework of dynamic capabilities. This was developed by researcher David J. Thies. He argues that to survive long-term, it's not enough to just be efficient today. You need dynamic reflexes.
Okay.
And he breaks those down into 3 distinct actions: sensing, seizing, and transforming.
Let's unpack those, starting with sensing, because honestly, that feels like the hardest one.
It is. Sensing is identifying latent demand. It's spotting new technologies on the horizon and seeing threats long before they actually arrive.
Like constantly scanning the environment.
Right. And sensing is incredibly difficult because of the fundamental nature of the future. The economist Frank Knight made a really vital distinction here between 2 concepts: risk and deep uncertainty.
This is a crucial distinction for anyone to grasp, yeah.
It really is. So risk is when you don't know what will happen, but you do know the probabilities. Think about rolling a pair of dice or an insurance company calculating car crashes.
You don't know the exact outcome of the next roll, but you know the statistical odds.
Exactly. Traditional corporate forecasting is built entirely for risk, but deep uncertainty is a totally different beast.
Because deep uncertainty, what Knight called the unknown unknowns, is when you don't even know the range of possible outcomes.
Right. Like a global pandemic shutting down supply chains.
Or a completely disruptive technology like generative AI just appearing seemingly out of nowhere.
Yes. Under deep uncertainty, relying on traditional point forecasts and spreadsheets is actually incredibly dangerous because it gives you a false sense of security. I mean, you can't calculate the odds of something that has literally never happened before.
Okay, so assuming a company actually successfully senses this deep uncertainty, what are the next 2 reflexes?
The second is seizing. Once you spot the shift, you have to mobilize your resources and make aggressive investments to capture that new value.
You have to act on it.
Right. And the third is transforming. This is the ongoing renewal of your organizational structure and culture, so you don't get stuck in those core rigidities. It's willingly tearing down your old model before a competitor does it for you.
But wait, let me jump in here. Because if you're a CEO dealing with thousands of employees, massive payrolls, and billions of dollars in shareholder value, shouldn't you want your company to run like a perfectly tuned, highly disciplined symphony orchestra?
It is the most natural managerial instinct in the world.
Right. Everyone reading the same sheet music, playing the exact right note at the exact right time.
But no, to survive deep uncertainty, you have to completely change that paradigm. It really reminds me of how Netflix CEO Reed Hastings describes his management style.
Oh, yeah.
He says that in the modern innovation economy, you absolutely do not want a symphony. A symphony is entirely about perfect repeatability and preventing errors. What you actually want is a jazz band.
A jazz band. Honestly, that sounds like a total nightmare for middle management.
It is challenging, but think about how a jazz band actually operates. You need employees who deeply understand the underlying structure, their instruments and the theory of the music, but they are given the freedom to improvise.
Ah.
When the rhythm of the market suddenly shifts, the jazz band listens to each other, they adjust on the fly, and they riff. They adapt in real time. If you hand a highly disciplined symphony orchestra a totally new, unpracticed piece of music while they're live on stage,
The entire performance just falls apart.
total chaos.
So what does this actually mean for the people running a business day to day? Like, how do leaders execute this jazz band improvisation in the real world without the whole organization collapsing?
It requires a very delicate, purposeful balance between efficiency and extreme agility. And here is the hard truth that most purely economic spreadsheets just miss. Achieving true organizational agility often requires purposefully sacrificing some technical efficiency.
Well, you have to deliberately choose to be less efficient.
Yes. You have to build flexible assets, redundant systems, and organizational structures that can be rapidly redeployed, even if they cost significantly more upfront to maintain.
It's like paying extra for heavy-duty shock absorbers on your car.
Oh, I like that.
Right. Like, they don't make the car go any faster on a perfectly flat, paved highway. They cost more, they add weight, they might even slow you down a bit on a straightaway, but they absolutely save your life when you hit a massive, unexpected pothole in the dark.
Exactly. And if you think about those heavy-duty shock absorbers in a historical context, Admiral Lord Nelson at the Battle of Trafalgar in 1805 is a perfect example of someone who paid for them.
The naval warfare example. Okay, so Nelson was commanding the British Royal Navy against a much larger combined fleet of French and Spanish ships. He's outnumbered. What was the standard, efficient tactic of the day?
The prevailing highly structured strategy was called the line of battle. Opposing fleets would literally line up parallel to each other and just trade broadside cannon fire. It was predictable, orderly, and heavily reliant on minimizing variables.
It was a symphony.
It was a symphony.
But Nelson didn't play the symphony.
No, he completely broke the traditional lines. He split his smaller force into two columns and drove them perpendicularly straight into the side of the enemy fleet. The goal was to slice their line into pieces and create absolute point-blank chaos.
Wow.
But, and this is the vital connection to dynamic capabilities, that strategy only worked because he married it with the superior agility of his crews.
His jazz band.
Precisely. His sailors had vastly better seamanship, and his gunners could reload their cannons significantly faster than the French or Spanish. Nelson intentionally threw the battle into deep uncertainty, knowing his crews could out-improvise and outshoot the enemy in the middle of a chaotic melee.
Without that underlying agility, driving straight at the enemy cannons would have just been pure suicide.
Absolutely.
And we see that exact same need for transformation and agility in modern corporate survival. Let's look back at FedEx. By the year 2000, they realized they couldn't just be an efficient shipping company anymore.
The internet boom was changing everything.
Right, so they executed a massive internal rebranding and consolidated their disparate IT systems to survive the dot-com era. They essentially reloaded their cannons faster than the competition.
And they kept transforming. They took those capabilities a step further into corporate social responsibility, or CSR. FedEx utilized their massive logistics infrastructure to pivot into areas no one expected.
Like what?
They started coordinating global disaster relief, deeply investing in environmental emission reductions for their fleets, and even running global pedestrian safety campaigns for children.
So they sensed a shift in the wind.
They sensed a profound shift in what society demanded of large corporations. They didn't just want to be seen as a delivery service. They transformed their assets to seize a new role as an indispensable global citizen. They proved that having strong dynamic capabilities allows an organization to actively shape its environment, not just helplessly react to it.
Which is incredibly powerful.
Mm-hmm.
So bringing all of these massive corporate theories down to a personal level, what does this mean for you listening right now? Because whether you're prepping for a boardroom presentation, whether you're trying to run a scrappy startup, or even if you're just navigating the trajectory of your own career, you have your own value chain.
You absolutely do. I mean, you have primary activities you perform every day on the job and support activities like education, networking, personal health that you use to sustain and grow your career.
You need to step back and ask yourself, where are you adding distinct value? Are you just competing on cost leadership like volunteering to work longer hours for less pay just to keep your job? Or are you differentiating yourself with unique, irreplaceable skills?
Right.
And more importantly, do you have the dynamic capabilities to pivot? When your industry inevitably hits a pothole in the dark, can you sense the shift, Seize the opportunity and transform yourself before you become the next Nokia.
Because the environment will change. The shift from physical value chains to virtual value chains was really just the opening act of the digital age.
Which brings us to a final, lingering thought for you to chew on. Throughout this deep dive, we've talked extensively about how a company maps its physical and virtual value chains. We've talked about how it relies on the entrepreneurial intuition of human managers to sense and seize the deep uncertainty of the future.
The human element, the jazz band listening to the music chains.
Right. But what happens when artificial intelligence and algorithms become so incredibly advanced that they start doing the entrepreneurial sensing and seizing for us?
Oh, wow.
If the digital data shadow becomes so powerful that the algorithm starts making the strategic decisions to reallocate resources before a human manager even sees the trend, who is the entrepreneur then? If the X-ray machine starts writing its own prescriptions and changing the business model, how does the human anatomy of the business survive?
That is the absolute new frontier of deep uncertainty.
Something to ponder the next time you look up at a massive corporate skyscraper, or the next time you get a notification on your phone that your package is just 5 stops away. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.